I'm here with Sydney today on episode number 2. Super excited to have you back at Fall State TV.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to break down sort of what was your career like and kind of get the perspective because for those that don't know, Sydney is from the Springfield area. And I think when a player makes it out of the Springfield, VA area, it's always, I think, a story that needs to be told, but it's also something that needs to be studied because you're on the path that you took is the path that many youth players want to have. And so, how does a girl from Springfield, Virginia, that grew up in a very similar ecosystem or youth soccer world, how does she make it to Europe, make it to these D1 schools? And it's like you didn't necessarily take the traditional route. And I know that's kind of like different for people to hear, but again, I can't wait to go into your journey and kind of give the viewers a little bit of like perspective and kind of like learn from your experiences on how did you make it locally? How'd you make it out locally? Like, how did you make it out? So let's get a little bit of background. So did you grew up fully in the Springfield, Virginia area, or did you come here from somewhere else?
So my dad was in the Coast Guard when I was young. So we just flip-flopped from Cape Cod to Springfield, basically, a few times. So we came, I'll say like permanently to the Springfield area or settled in the Springfield area when I was, I want to say like 8 or 9, fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So was your first like youth soccer like moments? It wasn't here in the DMV, or was it in?
So
Cape-
my first soccer team when I was like 5 was here.
Oh, nice.
And then my first travel experience or club, they used to call it travel for those who don't know.
All right.
But
Old
my
head.
first like club experience was in Massachusetts.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And to give a little bit of a background, do you come from a soccer family?
So my mom played soccer at Virginia Tech, and they were at the time a club program at the university, and they basically had to play against already established Division I programs
Wow.
in order to attain that and achieve that D1
Yeah.
varsity status.
Dang.
So shout out to my mom. But yes, I think that having her just have that love for the game was huge growing up, and then both of my parents are athletic and were athletes. My dad was more into the basketball and track situation, and then my mom with soccer, and she grew up swimming as well. So
No, that helps.
so very like athletic. I feel like base.
Yeah.
For that. So
You definitely got like, again, in youth soccer, the more that I'm in it, I start to see how genetics play such a big role in the development. And I think that background definitely, I think, helped you in a way because it is really genetic. If you really get deep into it, it's a topic for another day. But soccer, there's a lot of genetics that influence the performance and like the capabilities of individuals. So you had a mom that played D1. I think that right there is something that is such an advantage because she lived it, she went through it. But I think you said something that I think really that I can highlight that I'm like, whoa, that's really interesting. She said you had a love for the game. And if there's something that I know about you that I'm always like very like, it's like it catches me because it's like, wow, you really love this game. And it's like, yeah, we love this game. Like, we love this game. But it's like, no, like, one thing that I noticed about you is like, you really love the game of soccer. Like, you love this game more than most people. Like, hey, I love this game. I love soccer. But I don't know if I love it more than you love it. Because you love this game. And how much do you feel like your mom played a role in that?
I'm sure she played probably a huge role in that. I think it all happened, I mean, for me, because, you start the game when you're so young. It all feels like it happened so organically.
Yeah.
So starting from the youth days, and also I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than 2 to 3 years older than me, and they started him in soccer first.
Mm.
So naturally, I think there's something to be said about the second child as well,
Yeah.
because you have that advantage of the older sibling wanting to do everything that your older sibling does. And so with him starting in soccer so young and then me kind of just following the footsteps, our parents always were coaching our teams too
Nice.
when we were, like in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then my mom did coach me until I was about, I want to say maybe middle school.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah. So I think there was something to be said about just them and my mom having a bigger role to play when we were so young and starting out the soccer experience.
Dude, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so fast forwarding a little bit, so you have this, I say, advantage. You have a good base and a good root of like you falling in love with the game of soccer. What would you say, like growing up in the DMV, what would you say, like what was your like first club experience like, or your first travel experience? Was it like I'm dominating the rec level, so I need to go on to travel? Or is it just like, oh, we just need high level soccer, so we're just going to move on to travel?
Good. Okay. So when we moved from Massachusetts to Springfield, I was playing. I had gone from like a club team, and then my first year here or first season was rec because we were kind of figuring out the landscape.
Yeah.
You would never see that these days.
No, you don't see that. Everyone
just
knows
doesn't
already.
have it, yeah. But yeah, and there wasn't the media to, have the club exposure and really know the whole layout and get the lay of the land for that. So I just played for SYC. I want to say it was like a season, and then it was kind of okay. Let's go back to the club situation, and then tryouts. And I think I want to say in those days we had 3 or 4 teams in the age group, and then I think most everybody I think made a team. It was just like, ABC.
ABC. So
ABCD.
Little similar to what it's like now.
Yeah.
And so would you say, so you get into travel, what was like your first years in travel soccer like? What was it? Were you dominating? Were you like middle of the pack? Like where would you rank yourself like in your beginnings, in your U9 phase?
So we had so my mom was coaching like the B-ish. We had basically like a top team, and then we had like 2.
Yeah, the second team.
And then I don't remember if there was one
there may have been
or
a third
not.
team.
But so it wasn't like the top team, but I think it was kind of, I don't know. I think sometimes it's hard for me to look back and be like, like I was dominating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a couple, like me and a few other teammates were scoring a lot of goals. And giving a lot of assists. But sometimes it's hard to look back and say that because when you're in it and you're a kiddo, you're like kind of focused on, did I score? Did I assist? Did I do my moves? Did I, put in my game what I,
what I needed to
was needed to and wanted to. And it becomes, did I have fun during the game? Was it fun for me? And
that's
then
huge.
I think being like something about me as a player, like I've always been very much a team player and had just a big emphasis on being a good teammate. So I feel like that's where most of my focus went because I was enjoying myself and loving playing and just being a good teammate. I feel like when I was young, especially, that was like, for most all of my youth years was like, okay, if it feels too easy, it was one of those where it's, if it feels too easy, maybe we guest play. Can I guest play for
A better
a
team.
better
Yeah.
team, a higher level team? Um, and there was some of that going on too. Kind of early, I feel like in the youth years was okay when you're in middle school or maybe into high school. Um, can I guest play with this team? Or the higher teams would ask, you know, can
You?
these two players guest play with us this weekend?
That's huge. So
So yeah.
that's crazy because it's like, so technically, basically, you were like, and that's for people to hear this, you were a second team player. You know, people in this day and age, they get so caught up in first and second team, third team, fourth team, A, B, or C. But again, a girl that's from the DMV that went to play in Europe at U9, U10, U11 was on the second team. And that is, in this day and age, that is like, whoa. God forbid my child is on the second team. That is just detrimental. And and this is why I'm happy we're having this conversation. And this is why I believe there are nuggets that you gave in what you just said that are the reason why you were able to play at such a high level. Is because, again, I feel like in this day and age, we're losing because of the social media comparison and because you see everyone's highlight reel. People are losing the essence of what actually soccer is and what actually makes you a good player and what gets you on the pathway of development, which is, I love this game. I love my team. I want to be a great teammate and I want to improve as much as I can. I'm more concerned about me helping my team, me doing well, than am I on the A team, B team? Like, were you thinking about the A team?
I think it's important to note that because my mom was the coach, like I was automatically on her
On
team.
her
And
team.
then it was okay, after a year or two, can I could move up, but also there was a huge, she she was a great coach, a
Oh,
great
that
youth
makes
coach
sense.
as well. And her emphasis on development, I feel like, was something that not all of the youth coaches were doing.
Mm,
Um, so like we've had this conversation before where she would bring basically like
trainers, yeah,
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 trainers,
yeah.
skills coaches, trainers, um, into our trainings and
Mm,
to teach us, those foot skills and the ball mastery.
yeah,
Um, if she felt like maybe she wasn't able to coach
yeah.
and teach at that level, she's gonna bring somebody in to
Smart.
give us that development and help our foot skills. So,
That's crazy. That's
um,
so good.
yeah,
How many coaches can have the humility to actually bring someone in? Can they notice that they don't do something or they can't do something to a full capacity and then bring someone in? And I think that shows a lot of humility, but that also shows a lot of wisdom because in this day and age, you don't hear that. But that's a part of the secret sauce. It's like having that humility. So you being in a good environment, you didn't go to the first team because you were getting good development. And so
yeah.
that is, I think, again, in this day and age, in the landscape, people will choose competition, status over great development. Would you say in your development process that was kind of maybe your secret sauce is that maybe you weren't, yeah, on the top team, but you were getting quality coaching and quality reps and quality learning? Do you feel like that really helped you in your development?
I definitely think it helped. I think a lot of people would call it, or would have, or were calling it, like being a late bloomer.
Oh,
But I think it's important that, you know, timing is everything.
yeah.
And yeah, if you can really hone in the skills and just the knowledge of the game as much as you can from the youth days, um, it's just so important to focus on that and have good coaches who care about development.
Yeah.
Because I mean, could I have played on the first team?
Yeah.
Yes, but when you look at all those other factors, and that's where it becomes hard to
Yeah.
to know. It's hard to know when to change teams or switch clubs. I always say it's kind of like a feeling that you have. Like you just know when it's time to do anything. And that feeling I think carries through the whole career, you know.
Big time.
But yeah, I do think that in some ways it was beneficial to stay. And who's to say that it wouldn't have been beneficial to move to a higher level
Could have
team?
been, right?
You know, maybe that could have also changed a different trajectory.
Yeah, maybe.
You don't know.
You never know, right?
Yeah, you never know. But I think for me and my development in those days, it helped for sure.
Because we've spoken about this before. You said in those youth days, and this can maybe help a lot of parents, that maybe your child has this characteristic. You were very shy.
Mm-hmm.
So you were extremely shy. And so there is hope for the shy footballers out there.
Yeah.
Again, your story of, because you hear about the top youth prospects, the top dogs in the division, as they say, but it's like you don't hear too much about the quiet kids or the quiet girl. But again,
True.
you're living proof that the quiet girl from Springfield, Virginia can go on and have a D1 career and play in Champions League. And again, I think, how was it being with your personality in the youth game? Shy players, they get very overlooked. Do you feel like being shy caused you to get overlooked in your youth days? Or was it sort of like, I can't make noise with my verbally, I'm shy, but maybe I'm processing and becoming detail oriented because I'm so like, maybe I'm observative, or I'm not so I don't communicate that much. Would you feel like being shy helped you in any way?
I think for me, usually when I stepped on the field, it was different.
Let's go.
So like I can use like any like youth camp as an example.
Yeah.
Where when my mom watches this, she's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, it's true." But I would go, or we would go, and I'd be in the car with my mom and literally not want to get out of the car.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, change my mind, don't want to go. And that was just, I think, the social setting in a lot of other kids that I didn't know, unfamiliar faces and things like that. But once the magic words for me were like, want to pass, you know? And then you have your little ball, you go to wherever the bags and waters and stuff are, and then you just make one friend, and then you're set.
You're set.
You know, for me, for the shy kids out there,
they're out there.
That's how it was. So it was just having that experience of, okay, once I have the ball at my feet, it's fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, all is good. I think having when it comes to speaking and being vocal on the field, that was something that we had to really learn in our younger years. And I remember my mom would have us literally yell, like she'd be like, okay, on 3, yeah, like at the top of your lungs, just to get that kind of social like fear, like
break through that like barrier of
fear.
fear.
Because when you're young and you're learning how to yell on the field, you've been taught inside voice, outside voice. You know, you're not taught like, I'm yelling, but I'm communicating and it's important and I can ask for the ball this way and yell and demand it and it's acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's something that kids need to learn. And then to go a step further, kids who aren't used to being loud or having a strong voice outside of the sport.
Yeah, big time.
It's something that, we had to learn. And I think
a skill.
It was so important for me to learn as well because even going into fast forward to high school, into ID camps, that carried me a long way because I still, even in high school, would show up to these camps and be like, okay, like have to talk myself through meeting meeting new people at the camp,
Yeah.
or introducing myself, and then um and then college coaches are looking for field presence.
That's big.
So body language, huge one. Is this player vocal, and do they want the ball? Are they directing? Are they, how vocal are they? And that's something where, coming from a shy background, was something that, like, thankfully my mom and other coaches were so encouraging of, be loud, it's okay, make sure you're using your voice, and that will help.
That's
And
big.
I think being a good teammate was something that helped me find my voice on the field, because it's like, okay, I don't, you want to say man on because you don't want your
Teammates.
teammate to
Yeah.
get rocked.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you, to be a good teammate, you have to use your voice and let them know if there's somebody on their back, if they can turn,
Right.
and all of that, I think, came back to helping the team.
Yeah.
So I think those were, finding your voice on the field was super important, especially when you're a more quiet
Quiet.
person
Yeah.
off the field. So
That's
yeah,
big. You gave us the guidelines for shy players out there, because again, sometimes people will be like, "Oh, well, my child is shy," or a player will be like, "Well, I'm shy. Like I can be like Messi. I don't have to talk." But I say, not everyone has that luxury, and there's a lot that we don't hear from Messi because, we're not on the field, and so
True.
that's really good, and I think that gives a lot of parents a lot of like perspective that though your child is shy and quiet, they can still learn how to be vocal and how important it is. I come from a more extreme background where I had a coach say, he's like, "Hey, if you're not bold enough to speak, you do not deserve to play in front of thousands. You will not be able to play in front of thousands." And I'm like, ouch, but yeah, you're right. If you're
Yeah.
too shy to speak, how are you going to play in front of thousands in packed stadiums? So obviously it's different. You hear different things, right? But so growing up, we'll go on into your journey. Growing up, I would say about the U13, U14, U15 phase. You went on the first team? You got on the first team eventually, right?
Yeah, so there was just movement in the clubs, like teams fold or coaches stop coaching, and then
Everyone moves and
everyone moves, and then my mom stopped coaching when I was younger and started coaching the 9-year-old, the
yeah,
new
the
9-year-olds,
UU9s, yeah.
when we're in like middle school, high school. So yeah, eventually.
What age were you when you first got to, like, you could say I'm like playing on the first team at a club? Were you like, was it U13?
I want to say it was like U13 maybe.
U13 was your first year of first team soccer. Parents, are you hearing this? U13, a Champions League player, was the first time they ever touched first team soccer was at U13. So if your child is not on the first team at U9 and they're not Super Copa, Mega Copa champion, it is okay. There is still hope.
Yeah, we didn't even think of it that way. I'm like, when we were younger, I don't know why. It just, maybe the development aspect, or maybe just because the teams were kind of already formed. I feel
Yeah.
like when I came into it, so it was like,
Yeah, where can I
where
play
am I
now?
having fun,
Yeah.
And am I gonna have fun on that team? I don't know.
Am I going to learn?
Yeah, like there's
You
just
were
so
getting
many
good
aspects of
development.
it.
So
Yeah. So, um, I don't want to say, I'm like blanking on the age group, but
that's crazy, though. I mean, that's just, again, if you're U12, a lot of parents, I speak with a lot of parents, and if their child is U10, U11, U12, and they're not on the first team, they think their career is done.
yeah, which is crazy because it's like
Nah.
their career's just beginning.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and there's still room for development too.
So much room. So you get onto a first team around U13. Was it an adjustment for you?
I think maybe a little bit, but I don't remember having I never really had trouble
Yeah.
adjusting or fitting into teams
team.
because I had all the skills and I had everything that I needed to fit in. So it
Absolutely.
was super smooth,
No, that's
you know?
awesome.
And we also guest play. Like my best friend, shout out, the one I always talk about
Yeah.
being like um my, dynamic duo of sorts on the field. Um yeah, we would always guest play too. So at some point, I think yeah, maybe U11, U12, we would guest play for the better
The better
teams.
teams, yeah.
And so we just got comfortable playing with those players or with those coaches and so it definitely made transitioning into those
Yeah,
teams so much more natural because we've already played with everybody and
that's big.
yeah.
That's huge. A lot of people have a lot to say about guest playing, and because of the possessiveness in this day and age of clubs not wanting players to guest play, or I don't want this player to guest play because they're not developing this player and then they're going to get the credit for development. So there's a lot that goes into guest playing nowadays, but back in the day, it was the purity of the game where, hey, I need a player, you can help us win. Let's go. Like, let's
Truly.
guest play. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I need you. Can you help? But nowadays it's very sad, but it's like it's not as pure as it used to be, where it's just I want to play. Now it's like, hey, let me use this player to leverage the result and to grow my program. And so definitely back when we were growing up, the game was definitely more pure and more easy. And so that's amazing to know that you were guest playing in these U13, 14, 15 age uh, groups and phases. Would you say that you were like, obviously you were a good player, but would you say if a scout came to watch you in those ages, would you say they would have picked you and been like, that's the girl that's gonna go pro? Were you like dominating to the eye just off of first impression? Like, were you like dominating in those ages, or were you like still middle of the pack? Or would you consider yourself in those ages top of the pack?
I think when we did kind of come over, we definitely we fit right in.
You fit right in. But were you
Yeah.
like,
And
would
we
you
were
say
scoring goals
you
and
were scoring
assisting
goals?
each other still. Yeah.
You're still
Like
balling. You were balling then.
yeah, I think it was one of those where timing, it was the right next step and it just went from there. And then we went to those tournaments. We went down to Georgia for a tournament and we were getting looks and going to showcases.
That's awesome.
Freshman year we went to Vegas. So yeah,
It
and
became more serious. You were now at a more high level.
yeah, so we were going to those tournaments for exposure, and getting emailed
Yeah.
after.
Right.
When you're that young, you get blast emails
Yeah.
of
Come to this,
come to
come to
this,
this,
come
come to
to
that.
yeah. So coaches can't email you directly,
Right.
but it was the interest. So we there was that like feedback of
You were starting to get looks.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, who was this player? Who was that player? I think a lot of the girls on the team at the time were getting looks, but for whatever reason, as time went on, it kind of went into okay, who's more serious about it? And do you want to play? Do you not want to play? Um,
Yeah.
and then just levels of like, okay, I know I want to play in college. And I think I was about around, I want to say like 13, 14 going into high school when my dad had me make a list of my
Schools.
top schools, my top schools, why, and like how good the program is and that sort of thing. So it
It's
was like
nice.
going into high school was like reaching out to colleges.
That's a process, eh?
Yeah, it was a process. But to your question, yeah, I would say the feedback was there for
For it.
yeah.
I have this question. How did it feel for you, or did it even come across your mind? I'm sure you did ODP, that used to be the pathway to national team. You did ODP, right?
So I did the pre-ODP when I was, I think it's like 9
Yeah, the
or
DA,
something.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time it was pre-ODP, and that was like just a
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
situation. And then I didn't touch ODP again until like junior year of high school.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Would Did you know that there was like did you even know that there was like a youth national team, like a U14, U15, U16 youth national team of like a US youth national team?
Good question. Like somewhat, but it wasn't like as there were maybe a couple people getting pulled in,
Right.
but not
It wasn't like something on your radar.
around me. Like not something that I was like, oh, this person I sit next to in math class got pulled in,
Right.
or this person at our club got pulled in.
Or someone you played against
Yeah. So that wasn't really
on the radar.
on the as much on the radar until I want to say like high school, when like um one of my so like one of my friend's younger sisters got pulled in, and I was like, whoa. What
Whoa.
the heck? Makes
Yeah.
sense. And
Yeah.
it makes sense if you look at where she's playing today. She's in the NWSL. So it tracks. But
Right.
it wasn't like the exposure
Right.
of this person's doing it. I see this person doing it. So yeah, it wasn't like close in
Yeah.
the community, and even on on the boys' side, in our age group, there wasn't really like that call up
Yeah.
like
Yeah, you
I
weren't
don't know,
getting there
not
were
culture, but
yeah.
like
Not
it
a lot
just
of kids
wasn't
were getting a lot
happening.
of kids weren't getting called up.
Yeah, it just wasn't happening.
You're 99, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, the 99 generation, I remember, wasn't getting in the DMV, wasn't getting too many call-ups. And that's sometimes it happens with generations. Like, so that wasn't on your radar because a lot of kind of I'm in a lot of youth soccer circles, and a lot of the things that you hear is like, man, if my child is not on the youth national team by U15, 16, 17, I don't know. Like, it's not looking too good.
I think now it's more of a like solidified pathway
Right.
goal of everyone can see it. Well, everyone can see it now,
Yeah,
like they
everyone
see
can
the
see it.
rosters and all that coming out. But I think a lot of it in more like our day was like word of mouth and what connections your coaches were
Right,
having
right.
and things like that. So if your coach wasn't connected, you're like, all right,
All
like
right.
that's it then,
No, yeah.
So it wasn't even really a huge thought, I think, until I was older and I was seeing the posts or seeing US youth soccer. And I was like,
Huh.
what the heck? Like
Yeah.
what the heck?
Yeah, no.
um but but yeah, I mean, I think yeah, it just wasn't as prominent as it is
Absolutely.
now. And that's not to say people weren't getting called in. It
Right.
just wasn't in
You
my
weren't on the radar. They
sphere.
weren't on the radar.
No.
So that's interesting. No, that's really good to know because again, it's hard because there's a lot of knowledge now and there's a lot of information, and so parents kind of use the youth national team as a gauge of am I on the right track or not. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool to hear your story because I would say playing D1 and playing for the schools that you played for, University of Maryland and the University of Indiana, top programs, and you didn't have I would say you had a good youth career in terms of development, but you weren't like a top prospect, would you say? Like where like you're nationally known, you're
Yeah, no.
nationally like that girl. And so it is possible to go into to a top school, right? Maybe being a late bloomer, right? Because I think you're the definition of a late bloomer because you didn't get recruited till your senior year, right? Like, isn't that when?
So I was on track originally before Maryland, junior year of college, winter, which is it was kind of like prime time,
Yeah,
for commitments those days. Or you had your freshman, sophomore
yeah,
commits who were considered a little bit more like early
yeah,
commits. Um, but I would say like junior year was like early or like right before junior was like peak. Okay, perfect. And I had gone up to Northeastern was one of my top. So Maryland actually wasn't even on the radar at all. Like I never thought about it because growing up in the DMV, growing up in Northern Virginia, Maryland is one of the closest out of state schools.
Yeah.
So you don't really think about it when you have the rest of Virginia to look at. And you know, where you can have your pick of wherever, but you're not looking where can I go that's an hour away that's out of state. Just in general, you know, unless you're like they're offering me a full ride right off the bat. And then schools start to be on your radar. But so I had gone up, I had done ID camps were kind of my way of getting the most exposure.
Yeah.
And then so I had gone to an ID camp up in Northeastern because that was kind of one of the main schools on my radar, and loved the coach.
Yeah.
Loved the coach. Clicked with her right away, and she is a former U.S. national team World Cup player.
Let's go. That's awesome.
And she's like one of the legends. I would put her up there with Julie Foudy and Christine Lilly, and you know those. She's an OG. She's a Mia Hamm OG, and it showed. And she was amazing. And I was like, "Yep, I'm ready to be coached by you."
Yeah.
And yep, 10 out of 10 right now, ready to sign. And then a couple weeks later, so we were like, let's start the recruiting process. Of course, I'm like 16. I'm like, yes. And
ready to go.
Let's go. Let's do it. Let me sign the papers. And then in her personal life, she ended up not
coaching at
continuing at the school. And it ended up being, let me connect you with the new coach of Maryland. And I'm like, okay, great. And she was originally supposed to come, or the plan was for her to be involved in the coaching staff at Maryland. Again, I'm like, yes, perfect. And that didn't happen. Things happen, and you never know, especially with college coaches. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of things that you just don't expect. And so she didn't end up coming onto the coaching staff. But it did open another door for me for Maryland. I was like, I never thought about that.
It's amazing.
I've never thought about going there. And this is junior year. And then that was a connection. And then Arlington, the club I was playing for, I ended up going to Arlington for senior year, but I wasn't at Arlington yet. I got invited to the Arlington ID camp by one of their coaches, who I had been in communication with, and she invited me to the Arlington ID camp, and I met at the time the goalkeeper coach. Shout out Yawande. And that was another connection of a conversation with the University of Maryland staff. And so I had basically two different connects there. And so they ended up coming to my games, and the recruiting kind of started from there.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so I guess
it was like
it is
almost
crazy.
meant to be.
Yeah, it is an interesting story, just how that all kind of came to be, because it wasn't even on the radar.
Jeez.
And then I ended up committing fall of my senior year, which is late. So it wasn't even necessarily that it was a late bloom skill wise or technically, tactically, that type of thing, but exposure and recruiting wise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, because I'm a very firm believer in the game will always place you where you need to be. And I know yes, networking and branding and marketing is huge. Absolutely. It's so important, but I think at the end of the day, the game will always place you where you need to be. And I think you're a story, a testament to that, despite maybe not being like, not going the per se, like chasing the big clubs at the youth level. No, you stayed at your local club. And then your last year, your senior year, you went to Arlington, which was an ECNL national path. You only played for a national pathway club for 1 year.
It wasn't even ECNL.
Oh, but it was like, it was probably like the most competitive, like
It was up there. Yeah, ECNL was kind of
just beginning.
yeah, like it was competitive, but there were also still questions of like, is this the end all be all? Like, is this
Is this the
the
big one? Yeah.
league? Which it ended up kind of being that way.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that in the beginning,
But
that
you
it was
made
gonna
it,
be
and
that.
that's incredible, and I think that's just you made it, and so yeah, that's amazing. It wasn't even ECNL yet, and obviously you get recruited, and so you're going into a really good school. I think UMD is a prestigious school. I think in the soccer community they have a good reputation. What was the feeling after all the years of, you know, battling, grinding? What was the feeling when you like your first preseason day? Like, I'm a D1 soccer player. Like, what was the emotion behind that?
I think one, I will say, going into Maryland, we had a top 25 class.
Mm,
I wouldn't say I made a top 25. So we had my teammates, a few of my teammates were um, national team pool, national pool players for either the US or Canada. And they definitely made it a top 25 class recruiting wise, because they did have that, kind of experience in the
yeah,
youth level. Um, but going into preseason, I think it was just exciting. Everything's new. You kind of go into the environment of like eyes wide open, and it's also one of those where like, okay,
I'm
this is
here.
my
Yeah,
team now,
yeah,
So you're kind of you got your toes wet a little bit. You're kind of looking around, trying to see what the dynamics are, between
right.
the upperclassmen, because you go into a team in college and there's a 4, 5, because of COVID now 6-year age gap
Wow.
of all on one team. So you have your 18-year-olds coming in from high school, and then you have your 22, 23-year-olds about to graduate. So it's kind of finding that, okay, we're all a team. There's a bunch of personalities. People are coming from different states. People are coming from the twins from Canada.
Right.
We had just people from all over. And going into Maryland, we had a 14 person freshman class.
Wow.
So thankfully for me, they reserved those last spots because I was a late recruit. So shout out for them having a ginormous freshman class. That doesn't usually happen like that.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah.
It was
So
meant to be, I think.
yeah, somehow. So it's having basically half the team's freshmen, which was a whole growing moment for the
Yeah.
program, and then eventually I think we graduated with 6 or 7 in our class.
Wow.
Yeah. So throughout those years, we're coming into preseason super excited, and we have the fitness test. That was one of the big things, was like,
Yeah.
I think going into freshman year, you're always like, I need to do well on the fitness test first and foremost, especially going into college. Um, which for me, I think I'm very much
Like fit. Yeah.
fit, and um like it has to go well.
Yeah.
So
That's one of your staples, like your pillars of like your fundamental base of a player is like,
yeah.
yo, I'm fit. I'm gonna run. I can
Yeah,
cover ground.
I could run forever. So, um that helped me definitely being in that top group of the fitness test. I feel like that was like a security, that's like
Like, I
almost a
belong.
security
Yeah.
blanket. Is like, okay, I can learn the positioning, I can learn the skills, I can learn all that, but you need to start with the base
Yeah.
fitness. Like there's no excuse for that.
That's we
And
believe in that so a
oh
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
big on that.
Yeah, so um it was actually, I want to say, in the first week of preseason. So I came in as a winger midfielder always, And then the first week of preseason, second week maybe, my coach said, asked me if I've ever played center back.
Oh.
And I was like, exactly. It's kind of, I was like, well, when I was 10,
Yeah. Yeah.
when there were 7, 8 people on the field, yes. So he was like, okay, well, you're going to learn how to play it. I was like, wow, okay. What can you say? You're a freshman,
Yeah.
you're 18, the whole team is there. You can't say no, but it's also like, what do I do?
Right.
So freshman year, started some games at center back,
Amazing.
started some games at left back, started some games in the midfield, at winger, So it was preseason of fitness test, getting your feet under you. Can you play a whole different position than you were recruited for? And that's where the whole adversity comes in.
Yeah. That's the
You're
game at
like,
the next level.
yeah, you need to be adaptable. I think one of the biggest names in the game is adaptability, coachability, and versatility. So are you a versatile player? Do you have all those skills in your toolbox to pull from? And do you have the love for the game and the mind for it to be able to see the field from different,
Angles,
perspectives, different angles, different positions? And all of that was adaptability, and all of that contributed to the player that I am, or player that I was, and player that got to play at
at the highest levels.
at different levels. So
That's incredible. And I think one of the keys in my perspective and takeaways from your story, your journey, is I think that adaptability, versatility comes from your youth. And I think because from what I get, I don't think you were, or your parents were like the type of parents, which again, it's not wrong to email your coach, but I think you were like, you had so much love for the game and your team. It's like, in any way I can help the team win, in any way that I love this game, I want to play it. And I think that purity and that love for the game from a pure place, because in this day and age, there's so much junk out there mentally. There's so many opinions, but I feel like you were locked in. And that's why I feel like you've been able to play at such high levels. And again, I think this goes very counter the current of what youth soccer is now, which is I need to be at the top really quickly. I need to excel really fast. If it's not at the top, then it's not good enough. And it's like, slow down. Love this game. Improve as much as you can. And focus on being an incredible teammate. And everything else will take care of itself. And I think you are a testament of that. And so, because again, I'm in this world, and it's just so crazy that someone was not at the per se top club. You were at a local club. You weren't a huge prospect, but again, there are so many girls that probably were, but they didn't get to play Champions League. They didn't get, and for the ones that are watching, you don't know how hard it is to be a foreigner, to take up a foreign spot in a European club. Like, you played first division in Hungary, and you were the foreigner. So, and they only have like 4 or 5 foreigner slots. And so, to be a foreigner, to play D1 at the biggest schools, and to not have a traditional path, that just goes to show maybe we're missing something in this day and age in the youth soccer thought process. And it's, again, you don't have to be the top recruitment. You don't have to be the top dog. You don't have to be the biggest fish. But you just have to What would you say you have to do?
I
Like, what did
think
you do?
I think being in an environment where, for me, if I'm having fun, usually I'm playing my best. And if I'm playing my best, I'm having fun. And so those are like forever, those have been my that's been like my
The
thing. If
motto, yeah.
I'm playing well, I'm having fun. If I'm having fun, usually I'm playing really well. You
Yeah.
know? And so staying in an environment and finding those environments where you can keep that going, I think that was key for me. And I had opportunities to move clubs to better clubs in the area.
Right.
But I think part of that was still like the being shy part of not
Right.
wanting that new environment. But it was super important for me to stay in environments where I was still developing, or finding when I was playing SYC in high school. I didn't feel like my development was continuing at the pace that it was. And so I ended up, that's when I did ODP.
Right.
And so it was finding new areas for the game and new environments aside from the club game. And I played high school. A lot of kids don't play high school.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need a part 2.
Yeah, definitely.
But a lot of kids don't play high school, or they're not allowed to. And so I played high school, I played ODP, and I was still playing club all at the same time. So having those different areas, having those different components and different teams all in one gave me kind of different outlets to still find and like continue my joy for the game if I wasn't enjoying playing on one team or one area, then finding it somewhere else where I was going to enjoy playing was huge.
That's huge.
Yeah.
No, Sydney, we'll definitely go into part 2. This is kind of part 1, like the journey, and then we'll go into like what the pro world looks like. But thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think I took away a lot, and I know there's a lot of viewers that will take away a lot from what you said. And so I'm looking forward to episode 3 and part 2 of this. And just thank you so much.
Thank you.